What time is it? It's time for another Every Other Wednesday.
So, shall we begin? Let's start. And that means...
The jingle, the jingle.
What time is it? It's time for another Every Other Wednesday.
Did we pay people a lot of money for that?
Thousands of dollars.
A little bit, yeah.
I think it was like $100,000 to get the licensing.
The goal should be to try to listen to it without bopping your head.
Forget it, Richard. We're ignoring you.
I can see that. Yeah, that happens a lot. But welcome, everyone. Today is January 12th, 2022, and welcome to Every Other Wednesday, our first edition of 2022. And although everybody has been saying this to you for 12 days and a half already, Happy New Year. And we really mean that. Well, this is going to be a Happy New Year. There'll be a lot of room for that in the coming year. And we're all looking forward to a much better year than 2021, much better year than 2020. We just know that it's going to happen. My name is Richard Haddon, and I'm an author and speaker, mostly known for the Contented Cows Leadership Book Series. I live in Jacksonville, Florida, but at the moment I am in Des Moines, Iowa, working with some clients yesterday and tomorrow. So that's me. And on one side of me, maybe a different side for you, it's Jeff Tobe. Jeff, tell us about you.
I'm in beautiful downtown Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where the Steelers live to play another game. Just saying. My name is Jeff Tobe. I am coloring outside the lines. As you guys know, I've started a new entity called Customer Experience Systems. So I've started a new training company, and I'm very excited. I do want to say my New Year's resolution had to do with drinking more water. So during our time together, I may have to get up. I'm just warning you. That's all.
Why don't you just cut out the middleman and just pour the water down the toilet? I'm just saying. I'll go next. My name is Sanjay Knapp. I live in Oakville, Ontario, and I am a specialist in leadership and performance known by a brand called the 10-80-10 principle, which is about focusing on your strengths. Michael Kerr.
And I'm Michael Kerr, coming to you from this room, which I have not left in over 2 years, I believe, in beautiful Canmore, Alberta, in the spectacular Canadian Rockies. In normal times, I travel the world researching, writing, and speaking about inspiring workplaces, inspiring leadership, and businesses that leverage their human resources to drive outrageous results. And I'm thrilled to be here. Happy 2022, everybody.
And great. So listen, Jeff, why don't you tell us about something else that we're doing as the Every Other Wednesday team,
posse.
That we're doing in 2022. Tell us.
Our posse. I like that, Sanjay. You know, as a posse, and for those of you who are new, we developed this idea that you can bring the four of us to your next meeting, your conference, however you like. Seriously, the four of us will attend virtually and talk about culture. We'll interview your CEO or president if that's something that you'd like us to do. We carry the same terrible humor with us, and we have some fun. But might be an addition for an hour at your next convention.
So let us know. That would be a lot of fun for all of us, and I think it'd be helpful for you and your organization. Yeah. So guys, we're talking about culture. We're always talking about culture. And I ran across an article as I was rummaging around, looking at things as I often do, as we all often do. And I saw an article in Forbes in the December 29th, 2021 issue by an author named Carolyn Castrillon. And the title of it was that 2022 is the year of workplace culture. And she asks the question, why? So I read through that. And first of all, kudos to Carolyn Castrillon for writing this article, for anything that brings culture into the forefront and gives it more prominence. This was an article, in a magazine. She was probably tasked with writing that. She asks, why is 2022 going to be the year of workplace culture? She doesn't actually answer the question. And so, but it's a good article. I think that's what we're here for. It didn't go too deep, didn't dig too deep, but that's why we're here. And I think we can dig into that. And I would like to talk about that notion that, okay, we've all been through two years like never before, back to back. We're approaching this third year of this situation. And has that had an impact on the prevalence and the prominence of the importance of organizational culture? What do you think?
Without question. Holy smokes. I mean, yeah, you can't go anywhere without reading about culture, I find these days. I think companies, organizations of all stripes are waking up to the fact that they have to change how they've been doing things. And this has been a wake-up call for a lot of organizations, that they can't keep doing the same old they've always done before, that culture has to become a priority over everything else if they are going to succeed, if they're going to have more resilient employees, if they're going to manage all this change effectively, if they're going to continue to deliver stellar customer service experiences, all of that stuff. I think it's a wake up call. I think they've learned a lot of lessons about what they need to do to reshift their culture. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. If I can jump in, let me go first. If I can jump in with an analogy, because I like analogies. Before, the function of business used to be about making money. And if we can parallel that to health, and before it was about going to the gym and building lots of muscle. And you on the eating side, you ate whatever you want, but as long as you went to the gym and worked hard, you got big and buff. And as long as we treat our employees however we want to treat them, as long as the bottom line and the shareholders and the stakeholders are happy and we're making money, we're golden. And then this kind of revolutionary idea came along at some point. Someone said, I think that eating is part of this staying healthy thing as well. And so maybe you want to eat in tandem with going to the gym, and then overall you're actually going to get better health physically. And then the evolution of that is people then talk about the mental health of the game. And we realize this whole thing is a whole body experience. And so to culture issues, if you want to make money and you want to sustainably be in business, the underlying premise is that you must take care of your people. What is the best way to take care of your people? Yes, you obviously need to pay them, sure, but it goes way beyond that. We talk about the organizational culture and the mental health of the workplace, and all that's coming to the forefront, and it actually feeds into everything. But people don't realize is when you have a negative culture, it's horrible, it's toxic, and oh my goodness, how are we going to undo this? It's so powerful, we can't break it. The exact same thing is true for a very strong positive culture. When you have a very strong positive culture and a toxic person comes in, they bounce off it going, well, this isn't what I signed up for. And you get that natural attrition, and they're going on to the next place where they can go be toxic too. So there's my 2 cents.
I hate to be the yes but guy, but the yes
but guy.
Yeah, the yes.
I could riff off that one for days, but go ahead.
Okay. The yes but, and Richard, we've talked about this, and that is why 2022? Why wasn't it 2021? And why isn't it 2023? I think that, like you said, Richard, in the article, she doesn't answer the question why. We all know it's important. That's what we all do for a living, right? And we've said this over and over again. But she focused, I think, on maybe I'm jumping the gun, but she focused about I think she blamed the labor shortage. Not blamed it, but cited the labor shortage.
She connected it to that, yeah.
Yeah, as a reason to have a renewed emphasis on culture so that we'd be luring good people. I don't think that's the reason. I think that we're always focused on retaining and attaining great talent.
Well, so let me advocate in a devilish way on that one. Why wasn't it always that way? I mean, I guess the cynical side of me could say, okay, now we're interested in culture because we can't get anybody to come to work for a lousy culture. I mean, is that kind of what's happening? And then I also wonder, there clearly were and are organizations that even before the labor shortage were very focused on culture. And then there are those that are just now kind of, if you will, getting religion about that. I'm wondering if where that's always been of value, where that's always been kind of a way of life, I wonder if they have an advantage. I don't know. I wonder if they have an advantage over those companies who are just now kind of, it's kind of dawning on them, hey, we better clean up the culture here if we want to find and keep good people. What do you think?
Well, I just have to say, I read another article in Forbes magazine, and I kind of like their opening basically was that this is going to be the year of surprise in culture. In other words, people are going to reevaluate. They're going to reinvent themselves, virtually, physically, and everything in between. And so I like that. I like the idea that the best is yet to come, instead of just saying these are the trends. So.
Yeah, well, you remember when our guest host Steve Brown was with us a number of months ago, and he talked about, let's not do a restart. Let's what was the word that he used? He was brilliant. No, let's not go back to the new normal. Let's restart a new normal, whatever that is. And I think there's more. I think there's more potential in that. It's like that line. I think it's a Billy Joel song. The good old days weren't all that good, and tomorrow's not as bad as it seems.
Wait, can you sing it?
Yeah, I could, but I won't.
Yeah, I'm bummed that you didn't sing that. Come on.
No, but do we want to go back to 2017, 2018? No, this is an opportunity to really do things new.
Yeah, the phrase that I've been using over and over is hitting the reset button, right? And I think this is the perfect opportunity, and let's view it as that it's an opportunity to step back and do things different.
By the way, do you think could we get Billy Joel as a guest? As a guest host coming up sometime soon. I think that'd be fantastic.
Only if he'll sing those 2 lines, and that's it.
And that's it, and then he's done.
I know people.
And I was speaking for a private school of a very hoity-toity, fancy group.
Careful.
And it was a group of 7th graders. I was there the first day of school. And the valedictorian of the 7th grade class, they had a valedictorian for the 7th grade class. He gets up there and he has this welcome back speech. And he goes up there and he says, well, after a summer of riding roller coasters in South America and touring Viking caves in Europe, it's time to get back to the grind of 7th grade. And
oh no.
We lost Sanjay.
Oh, he's frozen.
I'm laughing, thinking,
Sanjay.
There we go. I'm back.
We lost
Sanjay. Rewind. We lost you for a minute, and we don't.
I know. I realized that because you guys had great expressions on your face. I thought you were enthralled in my story, and I just froze you. But so he goes, after doing all these things during the summer, it's time to get back to the grind of 7th grade, and I'm laughing, going, oh my goodness! But to him, in that moment, it's real. 7th grade is a huge stressor. But by the time you get to 8th grade and 9th grade and your first year of university and your first job and your first marriage and at the time, everything seems like, oh my God. So what I'm getting at is, yes, as we go through the whole COVID experience, in March of 2020, we are all pooping bricks. Oh my goodness, the world is ending. And now when we look back at a lot of that stuff, it kind of tends to unfold as it should. And in fact, a lot of the negative and the yucky stuff served as a catalyst that forced us to get our stuff together, to get us to be doing remote programming, to figure out how to keep a remote workforce engaged and still continue the business and still inspire people and still get people wanting to go to work and get to be there instead of have to be there. So at every surprise that comes up, whether it's 9/11 or the financial crisis or COVID, and I'm just picking up these big ones from the last couple of decades, in the moment, we are deer in the headlights. But when we look back and we can kind of reassess what's going on, usually very often they're blessings for us. And if we can kind of take the learnings rather than the freakouts, we will be that much further ahead. To go back to your question, the people who are already putting culture in the forefront, I think they have a huge advantage. Now, maybe they weren't working with the right technology, and in that case, people can catch up a little quicker, but they have the mental experience. They have having gone through it to understand what works and doesn't work for their people, and it's not as much of a shock to be resilient moving forward. So I think there's a huge advantage. The best time to plant a bamboo tree is 20 years ago. The next best time is today. I'm done.
Welcome everybody to the Sanjay Nath show.
No, I'm next. Me next. I'm raising my hand.
Richard? Yes, sir.
So Sanjay, what you're talking about are culture and practices. And those are two separate things, but I believe culture drives practices. So would you agree that if you had a toxic or an inattentive culture, or if you didn't believe culture was all that important to begin with, then your practices will show it? And you were talking about, well, maybe they didn't have the right technology, they didn't have the right practices, but if the culture is solid, then I think the right practices can flow from that. It's going to be a lot more natural for that. Michael, you're hurting chat today.
I know, and we have some comments in the chat box. I was just going to get.
Bring in our amazing audience for just a minute, but I know Jeff wants to talk because I can see his.
Speaking of past hosts, this is a good segue for you, Mike. Stephen Rayfield had a question.
Yes, he was up there in the chat.
If you guys would shut up for a moment, we'll get to the frickin' question, okay?
That's really not in our nature, Michael.
Stephen has a question from the chat box. Yeah. Interesting question. What do you think the new motivator set of tools are that can be used?
I'm not sure I understand that.
Yeah, Stephen, maybe can you clarify what you mean? Do you think there needs to be new approaches to motivating, engaging employees, new things that we tap into?
And in the meantime, we can go to Carol.
Yeah, and Carol's talking about we have more options now for work and meetings and even cross-country family gatherings. It's not the same as being together in person, but having the option has been a blessing, right? So there's some good and bad with that.
And she was amused by Sanjay's reference to first marriage. So that's a whole other show.
We won't even go there.
That's a 5-hour show, trust us.
It's still his first marriage.
Okay, so Stephen's saying if pay isn't an engagement tool, a strong motivator tool, which we know it isn't from scads of research, what is?
Oh, I got an idea. Can I speak up now?
Of course.
One of the things that occurred to me, look, if you haven't figured this out, everybody, we're 4 professional speakers. We deal with meeting planners all the time. And I think organizations have an amazing opportunity. Look, I believe that people will go back to work one day. I don't know that it's
getting back to the office, back to the office.
I don't think it's going to look like it did before. All those things we've talked about.
That place doesn't exist anymore.
I get it. But one of the things I was thinking about is that companies now have the opportunity, like a meeting planner, to figure out what's going to attract people back. And so I'm talking in generalities, but so what can they do to their office? Look, all of us have decorated our offices differently than before the pandemic, right? We've made it cozy or promotional, whatever it is, with our books behind us. So to entice people back to the office, I think that businesses have to start thinking of their workplace the same way that an event planner thinks of an event. How do you get somebody to physically show up? How do you make the space so fun and intuitive that people want to stay? What amenities don't we have that we should have now? So I'm not really answering Stephen's question, but what I'm saying is this, I think Mike said, hit the restart button. This is a great opportunity to do things like that.
Well, and to Stephen's point about, I think, what organizations need to do, and I'm hearing this from clients over and over. I'm seeing it everywhere in so much research that there's a couple of key things that we know are driving both people leaving organizations right now and engagement and helping people stay with organizations. And it's back to those themes we talk about a lot here. Having a sense of meaning and purpose in your job, people feeling connected and having a sense of belonging, I think has never been more important. And it's never perhaps been more challenging with people working remotely. People having autonomy and feeling that they have some control over their lives, having more flexible work arrangements, all those things, and yes, a fun workplace culture, all those things together are going to help drive engagement. We know far beyond some of the traditional levers.
I don't think that any of the core values have changed pre-COVID, post-COVID. I think the way we manifest them has. So people want to have a sense of a belonging, part of a team, part of a tribe, creating, doing well, doing good in the world, whatever it is. And it's just helping them to appreciate and see that. I don't remember where I read it, but years ago, there's just a whole piece of research that said when you took people working on the line, on the factory, and their job was to do this to the widget, and that was it, and they were just trained to do this, they didn't have a perspective of how it fit into the big picture. And what they found was when they took that person and they showed the other different aspects, it said, when you take the widget and do this, it then goes to this and it happens to this. And at the end, here's the product. And this product helps people to do this.
Right.
And all of a sudden, they took pride in the ownership of what they did, and they realized the output it had. And the job satisfaction went way up and the absenteeism went way low and all this stuff, all by giving people the perspective to let them appreciate how they were part of the
work impacts people. Well, exactly. one of the things that this author of this article talks about is connection. It was interesting because she quotes a survey or a study that says that from ADP Research Institute found that U.S. workers who feel strongly connected to their employer are 75 times more likely to be engaged. And I thought that was, I'm surprised, why isn't it 100% more? Because to me, engaged and connected are the same thing. I don't know how you can be engaged if you're not connected. And so that gets back to this idea, are we connected? Are we going to all be working from home? No, not everybody is, but a lot of situations are like that. And one of our chat commenters earlier, Michael, and you have probably a better handle on it than I do. Somebody talked about the fact that, if that's going to continue, there was a concern about how that's going to manifest itself in terms of our culture. And I've given a lot of thought to this and have worked on this a lot. And I strongly believe in what I refer to and others refer to as the spirit of the hive. I think that that's critical. I don't know that maintaining the spirit of the hive has to be a 5-day-a-week operation. And I'll just give you one example. My wife for 15 months worked from home every single day in her organization. They began to go back, and at the end she said, yes, I do feel a loss of that connection with the people I work with. They went back and now she's on a two home, 3 in the office kind of thing. And she said, that connection has come back. And yet I'm still working from home a couple of days a week and sometimes 3 days a week. And so I think, to the point that we talked about earlier, Sanjay, those days, or maybe it was Jeff, I don't know, it was all of us, that place is gone from many places. But there's another issue, and that is in some organizations, that place is not gone and working remotely is not remotely possible. We have to, we can all work remotely. A lot of people probably on this call and white collar jobs can work remotely, but not everybody can. And that's true. But I think one thing we have to keep in mind, or our employers need to keep in mind in terms of their culture, is they may not be able to offer that flexible work, but they compete in a world where that is now an option. And if you can't offer it, what are you going to offer on the other side that'll make up for that?
But what does flexibility mean, right? Flexibility doesn't necessarily have to mean work from home.
No,
flexibility
exactly.
can be going from 9 to 5, 5 days a week to four days a week, 10 hours a day or whatever.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of research that says it is the flexibility that is attractive to many people, not the geographic location where you perform your tasks.
Okay. So
right. Yeah. And thank you for saying that, Sanjay, because we have to broaden that out. It's about accommodating employees, and there's so many different areas that people need flexibility in. Like you say, it could be the time that they work. It could also all sorts of different aspects.
I won't be yes, but I'll be yes and, okay? Yes and. Richard and I, as you know, do a lot of work in healthcare. And so when there's no chance of them being flexible, they just can't be, right? Because of staff shortages and because of what they do, they have to go into the office.
If you can just put that gallbladder attack off for 2 weeks, we'll be able to take care of it.
They have to go into the office. So what happens then is now they're leaving. And it's not because of the Great Resignation. It's not because, because they're getting sick. It's because of mandates and everything else with masks. They don't agree with the politics, whatever it is. I'm finding in small hospitals that they're starting to leave in droves. And so what do we do when we're talking about flexibility? What do we do when there is no flexibility in a job like that? And there's other professions that's very, very similar. You got to be here. Retail is another one. They just don't have a choice, right? You got to show up. So
right. Yeah, but that was, I think, Sanjay's and my very point was that we're not just talking about flexibility in terms of where you work. A lot of people don't have that. And indeed, a lot of people don't necessarily want that, or that isn't their biggest issue. Right. But there are other small, I think, moments in any employee's life where just a little bit of flexibility from a leader or a manager is going to make
I'm wondering, Michael, if it's also autonomy. If we, you find it maybe not flexibility, but maybe it's that autonomy.
And again, depending on what the role of the job is, I've always had a major philosophy when I'm bringing on people for contract work, like doing a website or SEO or whatever. I always say to them, I go, I don't care about the process. That's your expertise, not mine. I care about the outcome. I want to dictate the outcome, not the process. And if you tell me for me to get higher search in my SEO web ranking, I need to wear a pink tutu and do ballet on the front cover, and assuming I trust you to do your job, and if that's what it takes, I'm not going to fight you on it. I don't care about the process. I simply care about the outcome. So by giving up that autonomy, going, I brought you in this role because you are good at it, and I'm going to let you do it. And that goes a long way for building trust. And again, when people feel trusted and welcome, they're going to give more, and that creates that sense of flexibility. It's also the perception, not necessarily always the flexibility. It doesn't actually. It could be something simple like this: going, hey, Mike, I know you have a dentist appointment next Friday. And why don't you take half the day off for that? And that can go a really, really long way for, depositing relationship bucket coins to having people buy into organizational
culture. Let me just say what it's not. My wife works for the federal government here in the States. And on the day before a holiday, they get 59 and a half minutes off. That's it. So, because if they go to 60, they have to pay them. So they get 59 and a half minutes off.
That's hilarious.
And they think that's flexibility. That's how the government, federal government defines flexibility. So again.
So Stephen has another question in the chat box, and there's been a few comments about folks using technology to make sure people are connecting in fun ways, having luncheons, having meetings like that. I do want to stress something more, though, before I get to Stephen's question, and we brought this up before. I think there's a huge fundamental difference between connection and belonging. They aren't the same thing. We have to provide opportunities for people to feel connected. And a lot of organizations are doing that very creatively with the technology, with a hybrid situation. We have to make sure we're doing that relentlessly, but that isn't necessarily the same thing as making sure everyone truly feels like they belong on their team. That's about creating psychological safety. That's about a whole other conversation, really. So I just throw that out there.
If I can, I think connection is our job as the employer or the creator of the culture. I think belonging is up to the individual to buy in. So once they buy into, I feel like I'm part of this group, then they feel like they belong. I don't think we create the environment to try to open up belonging, but I think that what we do is we create those opportunities for connection. And when enough connections happen, the person feels like they belong. That's my 2 cents.
I would challenge you on that one. I disagree. I think leaders.
You're entitled to your wrong opinion.
I am totally entitled to my right opinion. I think leaders and organizations play a huge role in terms of creating an environment where people truly feel like they belong. I want to get to Stephen's question though. Do you think that time away from the office working remotely has shifted the expectations or need to be in the office? It takes a set amount of time to learn a new way of doing things. Group, what do you think?
Absolutely. I think that people's perspectives have changed. I think that those companies who think that we're just going to go back to the way it was are kidding themselves, just as it relates to going back to the office. That's what I was trying to get across in that article I read. That I think that I like to say, and my saying that people know me is, we're going to have to shatter the stereotype of the experience people expect to have at the office. And if you think that just focusing on your external customer is going to get you by, I think you're sadly mistaken. So if you haven't focused on your internal customer before, it's going to be so vital. And in my new book, The CX Edge, I have a whole thing a whole section dedicated to, Richard, not stepping on your toes, but it is about engagement and contribution, and how do we recognize our people as well, and what they've been through over the last 2.5 years.
I was speaking with a group. This is like October of 2020. Boy, we thought we were almost done, and they were talking about people coming back to the office. These people are going to have to come back in the office. This person, by the way, had not gotten the memo that the employees are in charge. The workforce is in charge right now, not the employers, in terms of the labor supply. But he said, "Oh no, these people are going to have to come back to the office." And I said, "What are you giving them to come back to?" And I think we have to ask the question, if you're going to insist people work in a certain way, what are you providing that's going to give them the opportunity or the incentive to do that?
Yeah, give them we have to give people a reason, right?
That's right. I want to get into one other, because we're, gosh, it is 1:31 already Eastern time. But we are, one of the other points that she brings up in this article is about employee development. And she asserts that, this will be the year of employee development. Again, like with everything else, I think it should be. I don't see any evidence necessarily that it is going to be, unless organizations decide to do something about it. All of us are we all work in this realm, in this area, and we all remember back during and at the end of or after the global financial crisis, 2008 to, they say, 2011. I went on to 2015 for me, but that employee development, especially leadership development, really became a do-it-yourself proposition. Yeah, we're not going to spend any money on that. You take care of that yourself. Do we see that being any different? We know it should be, but what do we think in terms of organizational culture? Is there going to be more of more responsibility on the organization, or are they going to still turn that over to the employee and say, hey, you want to develop, you take care of it yourself?
I have a friend who owns a company that has a online leadership development, for lack of a better word, course. They don't call it a course. It's a year-long process. And he was telling me just on Monday that they've increased their usage by 200% over the last year. So it tells me, and he said that it's not individuals who are buying this. These are companies putting their people through this. And he claims that it is because they are investing in personal and professional development.
Well, I certainly hope so. Yeah.
If I can rant for a minute, this to me is this whole proactive versus reactive approach.
Yeah.
And the thing is, when you're proactive, all is fine and dandy, but you don't have that sense of urgency. And so that's why when the financial crisis hit, people were like, oh, training, gone. Oh, employee development, gone. And then all of a sudden you get to the point where you're like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. And you go into reactive mode. And the problem with being reactive versus proactive is it costs you a lot more in resources, money, time, blood, sweat, tears, and you don't get nearly the results. Again, quick analogy, little story. I used to have a rental property. And I had a kid that was living there. I rented it to university students, and their responsibility was to shovel the driveway. And this kid, Owen, that used to live there, and Owen was, and that's the problem too, is when we don't do our proactive stuff, if we keep procrastinating, it becomes reactive. And so he was supposed to shovel the driveway, didn't care to, whatever. And it was one of those days that it snowed, it rained, and then it froze. And so what actually happened was he went to start his car and went to get out of the driveway. He was running late for a meeting, and he started the car, and his car was stuck. What had happened was the ice had formed on the driveway and frozen his car to the driveway. So he was actually stuck in ice. So he spent the next half an hour boiling water, pouring it on his wheels to get his car out of there. And again, it shouldn't have taken him half an hour to get his car out of there. It should have taken him 5 or 10 minutes to shovel the driveway initially. But this is the analogy of what's happening. When people kind of push it aside, oh, it's not important now, it's not important now, then when it becomes important, it's going to cost you more. It's more time, more energy, more blood, more sweat, more tears, and you're not going to get the results you want. It's going to be half-assed.
Michael, you're working hard there on the chats. I can tell.
I was responding to a chat message, so I put
myself
on.
He was playing Pokemon Go, is what he was doing.
Do you know what the opposite of proactive is? Amateur active.
Very nice.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, it's about thinking long term, right?
Yeah.
I was responding. I might as well just say it now rather than type it. I was responding to Karen's comment about when you send an email and there's no acknowledgement about how that makes people feel potentially, right? Talking about this idea of making sure we're connecting with one another. And I was going to say, yes, there's some fascinating research that shows when you send an email and you don't hear back from somebody, especially if it's a supervisor, a leader, that it consumes a little bit of property, real estate in your mind, a little bit of niggling negative stress space in your brain that very often people take to bed with them even, and it just sits there and it builds. So those simple little things matter to make sure that we are maintaining strong connections.
I'm with Lisa though. if somebody doesn't respond to my email, it's that suspicion of mine that they didn't get the email. So I better figure out, how I bet either send it again or find out if they got the email. And then I'm pestering them. So.
Oh, doesn't that drive you nuts? I do that all the time. I think, okay, my email clearly isn't working because nobody is sending me just those 2 magic words, got it. That's all we have to do, right?
Yeah. It's making a lot of sense now. Earlier, when Jeff said, Sanjay, you're a jerk, and I ignored him.
Yeah.
And he sent me another email that said, Sanjay, you're a jerk, and I ignored him again. That's all making sense.
Exactly. But what about if you send the email with a return receipt and you get the return receipt and they still ignore you? No, that's a different issue. Right.
That's called sales.
Yeah. And again, I'm gonna say this again because I think it's going to be one of my themes this year and a lot of
we didn't get it the first time anyway, so go ahead.
Yeah, but there's a difference in, and we even something as simple as an email. We can connect with one another via email. We also have an opportunity through the words we use, the tone we convey in our email to make somebody feel like they belong.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to what we were talking about.
Which is what?
What are we talking about?
Really. You mentioned, Richard, in that article, you mentioned something about technology, and we kind of glossed over it. I mean,
yeah.
Where does technology play a role?
Well, the point that they make is that technology. I think the point they're making is that technology has a pivotal role in workplace culture. I still go back to kind of philosophically where I am on culture. Culture is based on a bunch of values and assumptions, and then there are practices that evolve from your culture. And I agree that if you have a positive culture that says we want to enable our people to do their very best work and make it easy and fun for them to do that, then we're going to provide that kind of technology. If we're just like, just slog it out, just make it, I don't care if it's easy or not, just get the job done, then that's a different kind of culture. So, I'm thinking about just things like, do we, now that everybody has learned to use Zoom and we're having a lot more online meetings, do you have good technology so that you can have those meetings good? Or are you still, operating on a tin can or styrofoam cup with the people in wherever your meetings are? Things like, one example, I love Calendly. I use Calendly. It's a thing where you can use to schedule and that kind of thing. The old way was you'd send an email and say, oh, I'm available this 19 times that you're available. And they come back and they say, well, I'm available this 15 times. And you have to try to shuffle a deck of cards to figure it out. If you use Calendly, you just put it out there and they can pick a date that works. I'm thinking if the organization says, our culture says, let's make it easy for our people to look professional and to do their job well, then we're going to invest in Calendly. Mm-hmm. If we're like, you figure it out, then we're not.
So Richard, how's that new position with Calendly doing?
But I think that is really what so much of this is. What is your culture, and then what are your practices and your techniques and your, what are the things that come out of that culture? So I don't think it's so much the technology itself. I don't think technology creates culture. I think culture dictates what technology we make available.
Yeah. And it amazes me. I was on a call with a corporation. Maybe there were 25 people, and 2 of them actually typed in that they don't have cameras on their computers. How can they survive? I don't mean this tongue in cheek. I mean, that company should be buying them a computer, or at least.
That's what I say. Well, and Jeff, you and I both have clients that is the case. I have seen it improve over the last 20 months because they just didn't have a need for that.
Right.
Now they do, but it's maybe been a bit too slow.
It's impressive that school. So I have 3 school-age kids, and when school went online, they made sure that there were computers and video cameras for all. And we got 3 Chromebooks from the school. And so, yeah, I mean, if the school boards can figure it out, we'd hope that organizations see the value in that, going, how do we keep them engaged? Well, seeing and hearing them is helpful.
Yeah.
I think the challenge with technology is, though, and I think you were kind of saying this, Richard, right, is ideally what we want is to leverage technology to make employees' lives easier, right? Yeah. That's the end game. Make our customers' lives easier, our employees' lives easier and less stressful. We have to be careful, though, that we're not stressing employees out. through
Right, giving them too much.
We're not getting in the way of personal human connections because of technology. We're not putting up barriers because of technology. I'm reading this book called The Power of Fun. I'm just partway through it, so I probably will recommend the book. It's a very interesting, fascinating book. The author also wrote
the first half anyway, right?
Yeah, the first half is excellent. But she's talking right now about the chapter title is a little depressing. It's called Why We're All Dead Inside, or something like that. And her previous book was How to Break Up with Your Phone, how to break up with your smartphone, essentially. And she paints a pretty glum, as do many other books, excellent books, a pretty glum picture about what technology is doing to our minds, to our connections, to our humanity. And so I think we do have to take all this with a little bit of, there's a cautionary note here that we have to be careful we're not losing something fundamentally human.
It should be a tool that takes us to what we need and want, not just the technology itself.
Last weekend I
you have 3 minutes, Sanjay, make it quick.
Okay, I'm going to take one of them. Last weekend, I was challenging my 14-year-old. I said, "You're on your phone constantly." He said, "No, I'm not. I can stop whenever I want." I said, "You cannot." He goes, "I'll go tomorrow the whole day without being on my phone." I said, "We're all doing it." And I disconnected the internet, and it was a screen-free, no internet day. And my kids did the weirdest things. They talked to each other. They made up silly games and were throwing things throughout the house and stuff. And I highly recommend that practice. I think I'm going to try doing it once every other week or once a month.
Well, you know what?
Every other Wednesday,
There are organizations that are doing things like declaring Zoom-free days, where we're just going to commit to not meeting on Zoom one day. I know organizations and people freak when I say this, because, oh my God, we could never do that. That would never work. Well, I'm here to tell you, a lot of organizations do it and they love it and it works. They have technology-free days where no email, no nothing in terms of the technology, and people, at first they bitch and complain, and then a few weeks later they say, "Can we have one more of those days? Because I got so much work done and I felt way more focused and I was way more in the moment and way happier and way less stressed out."
You know who hates Zoom-free days more than anybody is Zoom.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, guys, we got about a minute and a half. The question that we started the episode out with was, is 2022 the year of workplace culture? What do you think? Have we come to any conclusions?
The answer is meh. Every year should be.
Every year should be. The thing is, everybody on this call has some responsibility to make it, certainly in their world, the year of workplace culture.
Yeah, let's commit to do it. That's all. I mean,
that's right. Yeah, that's
and if you don't know how to do it, just hire us.
Right. There you go. Yeah. So, Jeff, what do we got coming up in the next 2 weeks of the next month or so? What do you think?
Well, I have a dentist appointment on Monday.
Okay, no, but I mean, we might have somebody in 2 weeks, a guest.
I see what you're saying.
But I think we do have a guest in 4 weeks. We're not prepared to say who that is. But anyway, folks, Carol has a dentist appointment today. Yeah. But anyway, folks, we do have to sign off. But just know that we'll be back in 2 weeks on every other Wednesday, which is going to be on January the 26th. And on February the 9th, we almost certainly will have a guest host, and we might have one on January the 6th.
26,
yeah.
January 6th, 2023.
That's a date that we don't want to talk about.
I was only joking about the dentist thing. I could have done that as well. So.
Well, folks, our time sadly is up. Another Zoom. Too fast 45 minutes. That's here. This is always great. We are so glad that you all were here, and we look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks on January the 26th. And from then on, we'll see you every other Wednesday.
Thank you all. Happy 2022. Happy New Year.
Thanks, everyone. 2022, the year of brilliance.
The year of workplace culture. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.